Good evening and namaskar. Honorable Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma ji, Minister Chandramohan Patovri, Finance Minister, my counterpart, Srimati Ajanta Niyog, Shri Jishnu Barua, the Chief Secretary of Assam, Shri Bez Barua, Chairman of the Governing Council of the Asian Confluence, and Sri Sabyasachi Datta, Executive Director, dignitaries, excellencies, representatives from various Southeast Asian countries and our immediate neighborhood, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and others. And other invited guests, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here. I understand you've had very good deliberations yesterday and today. And certainly this is a topic in which many of us ministers have been involved, interested, and would like to act on. So the oft-repeated Act East, Look East are all finding traction when you have such dialogue here. And when it is held in the Northeast, it certainly brings the focus rightly to the region, which so deserves to be given all the attention. From the last few years of my observing this Asian conclave and also Nadi, the very name Nadi, so much linking with the riverine civilizations, also focusing on a natural alliance, which is what it's coined from, natural alliance for development and also for interdependence. I think quite a application of mind has gone into coining this because it is a natural alliance which we want to build on. It is a natural alliance which is existing there, but as always with very many things natural, it remains silently. It is for us to tap it judiciously so that we don't have any excesses committed, but yet benefit from it. So from the coining of that name, and also for the understanding and underlying importance of riverine civilization, and for India, which has some of the best perennial rivers. We have so much to talk about. And also, given in today's context, where you're talking about environment, where you're talking about governance with a consciousness of sustainability, I think a conclave like this actually focuses on issues which will have to so blend with the policy making thinking which goes on, because otherwise it's always possible to ignore some things which are literally like elephant in the room. And here I'm referring to disaster resilience. So even as we are talking about so many critical aspects of bringing cooperation, which is very much consistent with Government of India's immediate neighborhood policy, and also with Government of India's BIMSTEC, the Bay of Bengal area countries initiative that we've, for the last decade, given a lot of attention to. So with all this, when I also understand that this organizers and the way in which this conclave has kept 5 C's as its focus areas. I was very impressed that they could pick up all C's, but actually those C's actually refer to those critical areas in which enough focus has to be given. If Nadi and the name itself is talking of interconnectivity, it certainly builds on culture and commerce. So the 5 C's really give us those 5 pillars on which this conclave, not just this 3rd edition, but also editions afterwards as well, will have to focus. Commerce, if I can recall all the 5 together, commerce, culture, connectivity, convergence, and also, conservation and looking at capacity building. So these 5 pillars of commerce, culture, connectivity, conservation, and also capacity building essentially captures all the areas which are so critical for our Northeast, the eight sisters, or Ashtalakshmi, as Honorable Prime Minister refers to them, have desperately needed that connectivity all these decades. The emphasis on commerce to be given as a benefit area because you have the extensive Southeast Asian axis, which no other part of India has so much like does the Northeast. So with all this, I will indulge in a bit of listing out of things which Government of India in the last 7 years has focused on, very much in line with these 5 C's. And therefore, I think this edition of Nadi actually can take very many things forward because the focus is very much on these 5 C's as much as the funding is also. I've after all come here as a representative of the Indian Finance Ministry, and therefore I would like to put before you what that kind of financing has taken place. Not just because we want the 8 states to improve, but realizing that they are our gateway to the entire Southeast Asian region. So even as I go about telling you that the focus has been our funding, and the funding has been for infrastructure, for better connectivity, I recognize that between India and Nepal alone, there are 6,000 such riverine systems which connect the two through the river. And these riverine systems are the ones which infuse so much of water into that entire basin. And so does between India and Bangladesh, 50 riverine systems, which all of which beautifully weave into one another. And therefore, we have every reason to focus on looking at waterways as one of the very important infrastructure for better logistics. Yes, roadways, yes. We've seen that happening over decades. Railways, not so much for decades, but roadways, railways, and now, of course, airways. But what had existed over the century as a cost-effective and better way of connecting people, the inland waterways had suffered for want of attention. And today I'm glad to say that Government of India has really gone into it. That is why we are able to see the National Waterway number 1 coming from Ganga, National Waterway 2 in Brahmaputra, and I'll leave the rest of the numbers, but National Waterway 16 going to the Barak Valley. So all this effectively gets us to talk about waterways as much as the development of Sagarmala, the various ports. You're getting the marine route as well replenished. The interest that both Government of Bangladesh and in a very cooperative sense, India and Bangladesh have looked at the Chittagong port also opens up immense possibility for the Northeast to link with the rest of India and for the rest of India to be able to move a lot of goods through the Chittagong port and via further land route into furthering into the Northeast areas. So even as we are talking about these, there are enough examples in the last 7 or 8 years where Government of India's attempt to better bring connectivity have shown results. I would start by broadly referring to the Sadia to Dhubri link, which better links India and Bangladesh. And these lengths are not small lengths. They touch upon 1,500, 1,600, 1,800 kilometers, and so on. These are distances which are very ambitious distances being covered, which in result gives us a lot of ecosystem which gets built on either side of the rivers, which actually bring in greater economies of scale for the project itself and also for the economy. And if we are talking about these waterways, I was happy to hear the Honorable Chief Minister refer to this, but I would certainly want to list out what this multimodal national waterways scheme brings into this whole picture. The national waterways is the pivot or the backbone into which very many of these come in like the fish bones, I suppose. It gets linked so very intricately, but yet so finely. So under this particular development, you have one multimodal, which is in Guwahati. Then you have 11 floating terminals, all of which are going to help in better communication and linkages. One port which is going to be a repairing port for ships, which is in Pandu, and probably 4 on the Brahmaputra passenger jetties. The names of the places are also well decided and activities are happening. These are Biswanath Ghat, Jogi Gopa, Pandu, and Nyamati. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it the way you would do it in the Northeast, but these are all tourist jetties which are getting built in the Brahmaputra. Besides that, on the Gomti, you have Sonamura, also going to be a tourist jetty, and Maya on Ganga. So you have very many of these jetties, the floating terminals, all of which are bringing in wonderful connectivity at different points, all of which can bring in greater tourism and greater commerce in the area. Now, with all these, I think the Eastern Grid is also getting better connected, and the Eastern Grid has an ambition of bringing 5,000 kilometers of navigable waterway, and that's what is being aimed at getting completed, of which, therefore, with the 5,000, you're having a seamless connectivity between the Ganga and the Brahmaputra basin, and of course, the much referred to Meghna as well. So Government of India has, together with the World Bank, which is what the Chief Minister has referred to, is building the Eastern Waterways Connectivity Transport Grid. And this is going to identify all the blocks or infrastructure bottlenecks and help remove those bottlenecks, as a result of which the seamless connectivity between National Waterways number 1, which is in the Ganga, and National Waterways number 2, which is in the Brahmaputra, and National Waterways number 16, which goes to the Barak Valley, will all effectively become that wonderful Eastern Grid, which can help us have greater mobility in this region. I already referred to the point that this underlines the emphasis that Prime Minister Modi gives for the neighborhood first policy and also to Act East policy. And therefore, I would think the focus has shown results, but it has to be kept up. The momentum has to be kept up, or else for a region which has been denied over the decades, that kind of attention to make up for the loss of time is not just going to be possible. So at the national level, the various projects which have been concentrating in the Northeast, I would just list out for your benefit. There are 9 major projects. Each one are signature projects. Each one is now being quoted out as, look what has been achieved in the Northeast for the size, the scale, the imaginative design, and so on. So I'll just list out the 9 so that we understand the scale at which this is being attended to. The Maitri Setu between India and Bangladesh over Feni River is the first I start with. The Bogibeel bridge, which spans over River Brahmaputra and reduces the distance between Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. 15 ongoing air connectivity projects costing more than 2,200 crores is the third I'd like to draw your attention to. The fourth is over 4,000 kilometers of road projects, which are budgeted to cost 58,000 crores. That's my fourth. The fifth, which I've been elaborating on, I would repeat it, the National Waterway number 2, which is on the Brahmaputra, and the National Waterway 16, which is on the Barak Valley, River Barak. So that's my fifth. The sixth is 20 railway projects costing over 74,000 crores for 2,011 kilometers length, falling, all of which are falling in the Northeast. 2,011-kilometer length, all in the Northeast, and they are 20 different railway projects. So that's my sixth. The seventh is the power transmission and distribution infrastructure, including rural electrification. The seventh and the eighth is BharatNet projects, which provide broadband connectivity to all the Gram Panchayats in the Northeast, which is also a project which is happening in the rest of the country. And the last one, which I like to refer in this set of connectivity for commerce sake, is the scheme for provision of 4G mobile services and seamless coverage along the national highway. So you wouldn't have to travel on a national highway, but have in between patches where you're lost for connectivity. So that seamless connectivity, seamless broadband connectivity is what I like to draw your attention to as a ninth point. Internationally, of course, I was talking to the organizers before I came here. The very well thought out, since May 2020, is the Indo-Bangladesh protocol routes. Every 5 years, the protocol on inland waterways and trade is reviewed between Bangladesh and India, every 5 years. And in May 2020, the 8 existing protocol routes have been enhanced to 10 protocol routes, and 5 more ports of call have been added on to it, together with 2 extended port of call also being brought in from both the sides. So India's also substantially funding many of the fairway by dredging the Indo-Bangladesh protocol routes with Bangladesh. The other international, I listed out the 9 different things at the national level, and at the international level, I've mentioned about the protocol for the routes between Bangladesh and India. Now I list out one more, which I have a little pet peeve, if I may say, the progress could have been faster, is the one which is between India and Myanmar, the Kaladan multimodal transport project, which even I've closely monitored in my capacity as Commerce Minister. It has its own difficulties, I grant that, but Kaladan multimodal would be a great achievement if we complete it. So if I said about 9 different national level, 2 different international level, there are so much more that we can complete quickly and benefit from this region, and also the link with the Southeast Asian regions. But at the national level, the instruments which are now available, which were not available even 5 years ago, are the PM Gati Shakti, which actually brings in a kind of a umbrella master plan, which brings in better alignment with one another. The projects have greater prospects of becoming a lot more capacitated, and also it has a greater leveraging possibility instead of standing alone as a project. And also the national infrastructure pipeline, which itself is 1.5 trillion US dollars, where 7,000 or more projects are listed out, and the FDIs are coming in for some of these greenfield and some of those brownfield projects which are listed there. The PM Divine, which I've announced in this budget, again, beautifully coined words for development of infrastructure in the Northeast. Divine is development of infrastructure in the Northeast, has come up beautifully. It is going to be executed through the Northeast Council. I'm sure with this kind of an attention being given to the entire Northeast, and with periodic consultations and dialogues being held, like the one which is happening between yesterday and today, we will have a greater focus and a meaningful developmental activity happening, development of infrastructure happening, just so, not just this region, but our connectivity with the entire Southeast Asian nations can be built and can be developed on culturally, in terms of the kind of civilization, riverine civilization. We have so much in common. and we have also to leverage it in order that people-to-people contact also get built up. I thank immensely the organizers for having invited me here, for having given me the opportunity to share my thoughts on it. It's been wonderful being here. Guwahati is always a great place to come. Beautiful state, beautiful people. And once again, I thank the organizers for having given me this opportunity. Government of India is fully committed to our neighborhood first policy as much as developing Northeast as the gateway to the entire Southeast Asian nation. Thank you. Vande Mataram.